got about 1,000 memories of your dumb little ass, and about 6 of them are pleasant. So why don't you do us both a favor and pull the trigger?
Yep, that's love right there. Hey guys, welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Retro Nemo. I've been rewatching a lot of Rick and Morty recently, what with the new season being out and all. And man, Rick and Morty have some pretty screwed up relationship issues. Anyone who watched the show knows that's an understatement. I mean, the man is willing to completely paralyze his own grandson just to get his parents off his back. Basically, you won't be seeing Rick and Morty in a stock photo picture frame anytime soon, that's for sure. Seriously, looking at all that Rick has put Morty through, it's safe to say that he doesn't care at all about Morty's well-being. I mean, Rick revealed himself that the only reason he brings Morty along is to use Morty's dumb waves to block out Rick's genius waves. Morty is a sort of shield so that Rick can remain undetected. That's right, much like a sexist husband going through a rough patch in his marriage, Rick only sees Morty as an object. However, that's just looking at it at face value. Knowing Rick and Morty, every single action and character is covered in miles of layers and other meanings that you just have to piece together. Basically, everything is more complicated than it looks. We're a long way away from just a simple mission to get mega seeds. These characters have been through everything together, and their relationship definitely evolved to reflect that. So looking at all we've seen so far, taking into account a lot of stuff that's happened in Season 3, I have to ask, does Rick really care about Morty? Let's start back at the very beginning. Morty is Rick's biological grandson. Strictly speaking, family does love each other, so there has to be a tiny part of Rick that does at least care. And obviously Rick cares about Morty. There's been plenty of points in the series where Rick has shown that he cares and loves Morty. But that's not to say that Rick is a very emotionally reserved man, and doesn't allow himself to have too many emotions. He does, however, have a few soft spots, Beth being one of them. No matter what happens or what version of Rick it is, they all seem to care for Beth. That makes sense, she's Rick's daughter. So shouldn't that love be passed down to his grandson at least a little? Rick has also been seen to love non-family members. I mean, remember Unity? Rick almost killed himself over a girl planet being... What exactly was Unity again? But that also explains why he's so reserved. Rick is afraid to feel. He's terrified of getting hurt. At the end of the day, no matter how smart he is still human. So we know Rick can feel, and he definitely has emotions. The problem with the question, does Rick truly care about Morty, is that it's really hard to answer completely. I mean, every time the show has an emotional moment and you think he does care, they make a total 360 and make it seem like he doesn't care at all. For instance, there's this scene here in Season 2, Episode 1, where Rick and Morty are in their collapsing timelines. When Morty's neck brace that would realign his timeline wasn't properly working, Rick ended up giving Morty his own. He was literally sacrificing himself for Morty. Obviously, it showed that Rick cared there. Flash forward to Rick Mancing the Stone, where Rick and Morty and Summer are in a post-apocalyptic Mad Max-esque dimension. When Rick and Summer refuse to go back to their dimension, Rick openly leaves them and heads back to his own dimension. Like, he legit just leaves them there. He's like, oh, you want to stay there? Fine, I'm just gonna go home. I don't need you guys. Like, literally. Then he constructs robot versions to replace them. Without batting an eye, he just replaces Morty and Summer. And this is only to make sure Beth doesn't realize they're gone. It's not like he really cares. The only time he actually goes back for Morty is when the robots don't end up working out. Imagine if the robots did work. Rick would have just left Morty and Summer there forever. Things like this make it seem like Rick only cares about Morty if there's nothing to replace him. I mean, think about it. Rick is constantly talking about how we can easily replace any of them by going to another dimension.
We have infinite grandkids. You're trying to use Disney bucks at a Caesar's palace here.
There is unlimited dimensions after all. But that's an interesting point. Why should Rick care about Morty at all if there's infinite versions? Well, this actually leads me to my next point. Let's go back to the Season 2 premiere. In its final moments when the timeline was fractured to pieces and Rick sacrificed himself, it pans over to show all the other Ricks, all of which had working neck bracelets. When they see that Morty's worked but theirs didn't, they have a complete opposite reaction, screaming,
"What the hell? What have you done to me, Morty?"
All of these other Ricks turned to anger when they found out that the bracelets didn't work. They all blamed Morty. But our Rick, C-137, he actually gave up his neck brace to save him. This isn't even an interdimensional thing here either. This was purely different timelines. Even when you're accounting for timelines, this specific Rick was the only one to have this reaction to Morty surviving and him not. This was the only Rick that was willing to actually sacrifice himself for him. That's the point that really stands out to me here. Not only does Rick actually care about Morty in the end, our specific Rick, C-137, and this specific timeline is the only Rick so far to show that he actually cares about Morty. Now that's a little obvious, and the show kind of showed this already. I mean, there's the scene in Close Encounters of the Rick Kind when he's tied up and watching back all his memories. When he gets to his memories of Morty, he begins to cry. That prompts the evil Rick to say,
"We both know that if there's any truth in the universe, it's that Ricks don't care about Mortys."
And it's true, no other Ricks care about their Morty except for ours. So why? Now obviously this isn't hard to figure out, and it's pretty outright in the show. So you're probably asking to yourself, wow, Retro Nemo, this isn't much of a video. I mean, the answer is clear. Why can't you just be like Vox? That table isn't round. Well, I bring up this topic because this season, Rick caring about Morty has been more prominent than ever. I mean, we see multiple conflicting evidence in a single episode, Vindicators 3. When they get to the last Saw-esque puzzle that Rick made, they're asked to give up the one thing in the Vindicators that Rick actually cares about. Rick himself suggests Morty, which tells us that he cares. But then, in the end, it turns out to be Noob Noob, a person Rick barely knew. Finally though, and the main reason I even bring this up at all, we have the newest episode, Rest and Ricklaxation. In the newest episode, Rick and Morty both go to a spa to relax. They end up in a detox chamber that removes all of the toxins in their body. However, later on in this episode, they realize that they removed what they themselves discern as toxins subconsciously. Essentially, what they think is the worst parts of them. Rick figures out using this method that the toxic version of himself cares about Morty, and uses it inevitably to take him down. So in the end, after all, there is a part of Rick that cares for Morty. The problem is, Rick sees that part of him as a toxin, a bad trait for him to have. If it were up to him, he would be like every other Rick and not care about his Morty at all. So this leads to the inevitable next question, why exactly does this Rick care about Morty? If you think about it, this actually further proves the widely popular theory, and I'm sure we've all heard this before, that our Rick is originally from another dimension until something happened that caused him to lose that Morty, and so he came to C-137 to replace him. Now obviously this isn't my theory, but it does make a lot of sense and explains little loose ends like how Rick can have memories of baby Morty when he technically came way later in Morty's life. Now this theory goes further to say that Rick's original Morty is now evil Morty, but I'm not going to touch that, that's a whole separate thing. All I'm saying is that it makes sense how our Rick cares. I mean, just look at the photo of Birdman's house. Rick holds Morty and looks proud, like he's happy to be his grandpa. This is our Rick. This is the Rick that cares about Morty. This is the Rick that cares about Morty because he lost his original one. No matter what he does, he just can't bring himself to not care or love Morty at least a little. No matter what he says, no matter what Szechuan rant he goes on, no matter what he tells Morty about how he can replace him, he always ends up going back. As opposed to the other dimension where they literally get Morty off the shelves. So yes, Rick does care about Morty. Against his will, he cares. So what do you guys think? Does Rick really care about Morty, or is it all just an act? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm Retro Nemo, signing out.
This video has been powered by Patreon. If you want to give us some more support, head to patreon.com/roundtablevids, become a patron, and get some awesome perks. Thanks for watching another video on the Roundtable. If you want to get more involved with our community and watch videos from Let's Talk with Tom, Voxbox, and more, click the video right here. Or if you want to get some more of the animation goodness, watch some Crystal Clear or Meaning Monday, click the video right here. And please, don't forget to subscribe.